Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. Michaela Mayer's triumphant return to the boxing ring opposite the ring late replacement from Sweden, Lucy Wildheart, was standing in for former two-time WBO champion Kristina Linnardatu. I didn't think that Lucy would be able to offer up the same challenges that Kristina would have. And though she did well to go the distance with Michaela Mayer, a far more experienced fighter than she is, as far as competitiveness, it really wasn't competitive. Michaela was just better at every turn, better all around. You'll notice that Lucy and Michaela tried for a lot of the same shots. Within striking distance, Michaela's shots consistently found a home. Michaela was by and large the more accurate fighter of the two. That jab right hand combination. Michaela's always had a lot of success throughout her career with that jab right hand combination, and that's what we saw in the Lucy Wildheart fight. Consistently nailing Lucy Wildheart with that right hand. She took the punch as well for the most part, she did. But she took punches. As Michaela stepped into her jab, getting well within striking distance of Lucy to let go of good body shots, clean ones, mid-range to inside. Moments in this fight where Lucy was taking a lot of punishment, and I thought to myself, Michaela can stop her. Lucy Wildheart, the late replacement, weathering the onslaught and hanging tough. Michaela looked strong, looked sharp. Chalk that up to Michaela Mayer not having to cut the extra 5 pounds to make super featherweight, now campaigning as a lightweight, that's 135 pounds. That's where Katie Taylor still reigns as that division's undisputed champion, and that's what this fight, that's what it was all about. Lining up Michaela for a title shot, Katie Taylor. She's in line now. Michaela Mayer seemed more accurate, more effective with her offense than Lucy Wildheart. You can chalk that up to experience. Michaela has a better understanding of distance and spacing. Michaela understands her range better than Lucy. Because she's more experienced than Lucy. Lucy, who I reiterate, didn't offer up the same challenges that Kristina Linnardatu would have. Kristina, who's a shorter fighter than Lucy, and definitely a shorter fighter than Michaela Mayer, a shorter, stumpier fighter with a lower center of gravity that fights on a swivel as they close the distance. I think Michaela would have struggled to land that jab right hand combination if it were Kristina she were fighting. Would have been harder to land. Lucy, not being as experienced a fighter as Kristina, not as big a puncher either. Yeah, she really couldn't keep Michaela Mayer off of her. You could see that Michaela was punching with intent, punching with spite. It set a good pace for the fight that I think Lucy Wildheart was not accustomed to. And why would she be? She's not as experienced a fighter at this level as Michaela Mayer, who was really letting her have it. Painting her face with the jab. Ahead of the fight, I talked about how Lucy Wildheart, she throws a shorter jab than Michaela Mayer. Michaela being a taller, longer fighter with longer legs, longer strides, longer arms, she's likely going to manage the distance at which the fight is being fought off the jab. Lucy's going to struggle to get around it, and she did. That's what we saw. Better with the jab on the back foot, better with the jab on the front foot when she was stepping into it, getting within striking distance of Lucy Wildheart, who really is more of a mid-range to inside fighter, though mid-range to inside, it was Michaela that was dominating the pocket, stepping into her jab and letting go of those body shots within close proximity of Lucy, who took the shots well. She took some shots. Michaela Mayer's power, the brunt in her punches, and the effect they were having, it looked good. She looked strong. This doesn't surprise me. Michaela Mayer was always on the bigger, much bigger end of the spectrum as far as super featherweights went. At lightweight, she'll fit right in. She will. I'd give her very good odds to beat the likes of an Estelle Mosley, unbeaten Estelle Mosley, Olympic gold medalist from France. Based on what I saw Michaela do to Lucy, I think she'd clean Estelle Mosley's clock, along with a lot of other girls here at lightweight. Lucy did her best, but it's very hard for me to say that she was ever really in this fight or that it was even competitive. Not to me, it wasn't. But I won't begrudge Lucy for that, because Lucy really was a late replacement, just under 24 hours. Not like she had adequate preparation for a fight like this, but she didn't go down and she didn't go out. She was dominated by Michaela, she was, but she managed to go the distance, and just like that, Michaela Mayer is back in the winner's bracket and in line for a Katie Taylor showdown. Will she get it? She better take a number. There's a lot of girls gunning for Katie Taylor, and she's just one among them. Congratulations to Michaela Mayer for advancing to a professional record of 18 wins and just 1 loss. She's back in the winner's bracket and back in the mix of things. We then come to the main event of that same card, the WBO interim title fight between Joyce and Zhang. Joyce's shock upset loss. Zhang having dismantled him over 6 rounds.
Joe's reputation for being durable, having a cast iron chin, it's one of those things that's a gift and a curse, because you don't get a reputation like that for being a defensive wizard. You get that reputation for taking shots, heavy shots, and being able to power through them. And Joe's had a lot of success with that up until he ran into Zhang.
Ahead of the fight, I talked about how Zhang may very well be the biggest puncher Joe's fought so far, and that seems to have been the case, that just because he was able to walk through Joseph Parker, a guy who's often referred to as being too polite, not having enough dog in him, that performance would not speak to what he'd face with Zhang.
It's not even that Joe lost that's surprising. It's how fast Zhang was able to pile up the damage.
In 6 rounds, he was able to put a beating on Joyce. Joyce, who's known as a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, a durable one who's no defensive wizard.
Bloody nose and a closed eye.
Zhang being a southpaw, very big one, a statuesque southpaw, eye level to Joyce, he was able to consistently connect straight left hand after straight left hand after straight left hand on the right eye of Joyce. Joe, who's got a reputation for being durable, but he's also got a reputation for not keeping his head off center, not moving it.
He's been able to get away with that up until this point.
So it's no revelation that Joyce, he ain't got the best defense. I mean, the Bryant Jennings fight and the number of right hands he took in that fight. The more recent Christian Hammer fight right before the Joseph Parker fight, how Christian Hammer was able to consistently connect with overhand rights.
Big ones that Joe was able to take.
He wasn't able to weather the storm opposite the ring, Zhang.
I want to say that this isn't the outcome that I expected. I expected that Zhang, being a strong puncher, the strongest puncher that Joe's faced so far, I anticipated that maybe he connects that backhand with Joe's jaw, makes that guy hit the deck, but Joe will get up off the canvas and he'll secure the W.
That Joe was going to have to earn his money in this fight, that's what I anticipated, but I didn't anticipate that Zhang would deconstruct Joyce the way that he did.
Very early in the fight, you saw that Zhang's punches had more snap on them, and he had the heavier shots.
The heavier hands of the two.
In the second round, you saw Zhang rock Joyce, not once, but twice.
Some are pointing to Joyce coming into this fight lighter than he was in his previous fight, something like, 14 or 15 pounds, though I think that's irrelevant to the outcome of the match, because Joe wasn't taking those shots to the body, he was taking them to the face.
So what difference would that have made?
If he were 15 pounds heavier as opposed to 15 pounds lighter, the damage that he took over that right eye.
What difference would that have made?
It's Joyce's identity as a fighter, his overall approach.
It's his defensive deficiencies that costed him this fight.
He was facing a guy who's eye level to him, just as big, just as physically imposing, with enough height and enough reach to catch him on the way in. Catch him with that backhand.
Joe being as aggressive as he is, you know he's going to march forward, you know he's going to throw punches in bunches.
You know that because he doesn't move his head, he's there for counter shots.
Can be caught between the punches.
Caught in between the punches by a guy who's tall enough and long enough to play a bit of catch and shoot.
Strong enough to simmer Joe down. Strong enough to back him off.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be like what you saw in the Hammer fight or what you saw in the Parker fight, because those guys, those are shorter, stumpier fighters than Joyce. They're not eye level to him.
Given his size and volume, he can overwhelm them, but a guy eye level to Joe.
You saw what happened. Dillian White was in attendance for the match. I have no doubts. He figured, like most of us figured, that Joyce would emerge triumphant.
Nope.
He was looking for a fight with him. That as a result of the Joshua rematch not happening this summer, he was looking for a Joyce fight, provided that Joe won.
Joe lost, so you have to wonder if Dillian's going to keep that same energy. Would he like a fight with Zhang if one were offered to him?
Zhang is WBO interim champion now, in line for an Alexander Usyk fight. Is that to Dillian White's fancy?
Zhang can make things very difficult. He was ringside to see that himself.
I gave the first round to Zhang off those combinations, eye-catching punches. It was established early that Zhang had the heavier hands of the two.
I gave him the first round.
As well as the second round where Zhang staggered Joyce 2 times off 2 very big shots.
Joe suffered a bloody nose.
It was established then and there that Zhang had come to fight. I gave Joyce the third round on activity and activity alone. He wasn't landing eye-catching shots like Zhang was per se, but he was the more prolific puncher, the busier puncher, at least in the third round.
It became more and more apparent even throughout the third that Zhang couldn't miss him. He couldn't miss him with that straight left hand.
The damage to that right eye was only getting worse.
Zhang was a lot more economic in the third round, leaving the door open for Joyce to be a little bit more prolific, put punches together, be the busier fighter.
So I gave Joe the third round on that premise, on activity.
Wasn't actually landing very many eye-catching shots, and a lot of his combinations, they weren't really getting through, but he was the noticeably busier fighter, enough that I was able to give him the round.
I gave Joe the third, I gave Zhang the fourth, off of those straight left hands, those backhands from out of the southpaw stance. Noticeable damage to the right eye of Joyce. It wasn't getting better.
Zhang was very poised, staying behind that high guard, catching and shooting.
Joe's doing his best to stay in character, throwing punches in bunches, but many of them weren't getting past the guard.
The high guard of Zhang
Literally stopped Joyce dead in his tracks whenever that punch landed, snapping his head back.
Sense of impending doom whenever that happened.
Felt like the fifth round was a little bit more nip and tuck. Much like in the third round, you saw Joyce trying to stay in character, trying to be the busier fighter. He wasn't really getting through with eye-catching shots or penetrating the guard.
Weren't really seeing much of a response from Zhang. Perhaps he was playing possum, conserving his energy for the next round.
Joe, for all his best efforts and his volumes, he just wasn't getting in. He wasn't landing cleanly.
He was trying.
Enough that I had it 3-2 in favor of Zhang, with Joe picking up the fifth. 3-2 going into the sixth.
And in the sixth, we saw Joyce trying to rally back, trying to pour it on, be busy.
Zhang let go of a series of power shots, enough that the referee stopped the action.
Walks Joe over to the ringside dock.
They get a look at that eye. Referee decides he's seen enough.
He waved it off.
Can't say as I blame him. Joyce displayed a gross inability to stay out of the way of that particular punch.
Could have been a lot worse if the contest went on.
Joyce, he threw a lot more punches than Zhang. Approximately 464 punches to Zhang's 180.
But this is one of those quality over quantity kind of deals. Even though Zhang didn't throw anywhere near as many punches as Joe, he landed 46% of the shots he did throw.
Whereas Joe only landed 18, highlighting that in spite of his volume punching, he just wasn't penetrating the guard. His shots weren't getting in.
Zhang was more poised, more controlled, and it's interesting because ahead of the fight, the Zhang people knew they couldn't hope to win a decision in this fight. They had to take it out of the judges' hands.
I have no doubts they had the decision in the Filip Hrgovic fight in mind.
They knew they couldn't hope to win on points. They knew they had to take it out of the judges' hands, and that's exactly what they did.
This doesn't make Joyce a hype job in my eyes or a bad fighter. It was just a bad stylistic matchup for him. Zhang came prepared.
I overestimated Joe's durability, and I underestimated Zhang's boxing ability.
And that's the skinny. I feel like Joyce has done enough. Opposite the ring, guys like Daniel Dubois and Carlos Takam, Bermain Stavern, Christian Hammer, more recently Joseph Parker.
He's a world-class fighter. He's a world-class contender. He's still those things in my eyes.
Just taking it on the chin the way that he does. That's the kind of thing that works right up until it doesn't.
Some might feel that this is a cherry pick for Joe gone wrong, but I don't think he was cherry picking by fighting Zhang. We all saw what he did to Filip Hrgovic.
Just think Joe decided to roll the dice and it didn't work out.
It's like that sometimes.
You ask yourself, what could Joyce have done differently in this fight with Zhang? What could he have done to secure the W? And it's not as simple as saying that Joe should have jabbed more, because Zhang's got a great counter for that jab, a counter right hook out of the southpaw stance, and he's got a great backhand. That's what he painted Joyce's face with. It's not as simple as saying that Joe could have made one or two adjustments, tweaked a few things to win the fight, because he was having so much success already. Being who he was.
How could he have known?
Of the two fighters in the fight, he already had the more robust body of work against the more seasoned fighters like Bryant Jennings and Carlos Takam, Christian Hammer, Daniel Dubois, more recently a former champion in Joseph Parker, one of two former champions he's fought. He also fought former WBC champion Bermain Stavern. Joyce was having so much success just being himself and staying in character. How could he have known this would be the outcome?
I reiterate, I don't think that Joe is a bad fighter.
Just decided to roll the dice against a solid fighter in Zhang, and it didn't work work out. There's talk of a rematch, Joe Joyce having a rematch clause.
I heard something about that, but I don't know that he should pursue it.
For the reasons I just mentioned. Joe Joyce is a pressure fighter. Pressure fighters, they don't change much in between fights, you understand. These are the kind of fighters that stay in character, through and through.
It's not impossible that Joe could make a few adjustments ahead of a rematch.
Possible. Anything is possible. It's how probable it is that I'm concerned with, because pressure fighters, generally speaking, they don't change much in between fights.
Joe's had these bad habits for a long time, habits that may be hard to break. He's had these same defensive deficiencies from the moment he went pro.
So all of a sudden he's going to change them ahead of a rematch? No, I think that if Joe can put a little bit of distance between himself and Zhang, at least for the time being, maybe pursue that Dillian White fight, which is still a cash fight. You can still sell that in the UK. Fight that guy on the bounce.
Dillian was just on the bounce himself in the Jermaine Franklin fight.
I'm sure that seeing Joe Joyce suffer that loss the way that he did, Dillian White likely still is receptive to a Joe Joyce fight, because he seems more beatable now and he could still make decent money.
Yeah, I think he'd fight the guy. Under these circumstances, I think Dillian would still fight him.
That if Joe Joyce don't want to pursue an immediate rematch, that's an option.
You know, the people over there at Matchroom are always getting criticized for their usage of rematch clauses and sequels.
Well, the boo birds out there always levying those criticisms against them levy those same criticisms in reference to this fight.
This potential rematch, where they much rather see Zhang in there with some new blood, some fresh meat, that he beat Joe Joyce decisively.
I suppose that the problem with that scenario is that Zhilei Zhang being a heavyweight of Chinese descent, what other big fight could you put him in? You know, Usyk's otherwise preoccupied right now. He's got to answer to Daniel Dubois.
Would Tyson Fury be receptive to a fight against Zhilei Zhang?
Brazen xenophobia in the past and disregard of Alexander Usyk in previous instances, and now in reference to Usyk not being a British-born fighter.
Fury's belittled and berated Usyk on that premise, even though he's a unified champion who's coming off of beating one of the biggest names in British boxing, Anthony Joshua, 2 times.
Still belittles that guy. So you think he's going to have time for Zhilei Zhang?
Come on.
So the problem with that scenario, if Zhang isn't running it back immediately with Joe Joyce, who do you keep him busy with that's worth his while?
WBO interim champion. The story is that Frank Warren has options on Zhilei Zhang moving forward. It's up to him to put him in the ring with a live body.
And if it's not Joe Joyce for a second time, who's it going to be?
If it is Joe Joyce, what you then have to ask is, what are his chances? How much can he change in between fights?
Rematches are usually won by the fighter that can make the most adjustments, and that's seldom ever a pressure fighter. With a pressure fighter, what you see is what you get.
They don't change much in between fights.
Can Joe be the exception?